The Wheel is the first single that we, the Housekeeping Society, are releasing, and it is to be taken from our new album.
The main song is a new piece, but it's kind of surrounded by 3 other songs or parts of songs that will appear elsewhere on the album.
So it introduces a lot of the sounds and a lot of the kind of instrumentation and arrangement that we're using throughout the rest of the album, which I think is quite nice, but in no way is it a kind of musical ready meal, because it's certainly, there's a lot of meat in that fare that is the Wheel, but it's kind of like it's everything that we've been working on distilled down into one song, which I think is quite sweet.
The single opens with a brass band. We had talked about using brass bands before. It's a very northern sound. It's the kind of music that would have been kicking around at the time. One of the first conversations that we had, we were quite drunk, but I do remember it, was the idea of talking about what kind of music that community would have been listening to, and we started talking about hymns. And pretty much as soon as I got home from that conversation, I started writing a piece called Same Old, Same Old. And I wrote some lyrics for it, and it will appear as an a cappella later on in the album, but we thought it would be a good thing to open this record with. We were lucky enough to know a guy called Danny Robertson, who's been playing in brass bands for years and years and years since he was a teenager. And so he came in and played some cornet and some trumpet and all kinds of different brass instruments to get that kind of real warm Yorkshire brass band kind of sound.
We talked about hymns, but then we also talked about kind of Salvation Army bands as being a major vehicle for people to hear those hymns played in public. So we like the idea of having something that could almost be played by a Salvation Army band, and what you hear at the start of the Wheel is this song called Same Old, which is Rick very much wrote kind of in the style of a Victorian hymnal.
As with a lot of the stuff on the album, we kind of just started to jam up ideas, and it generally went very well. We had a really good first rehearsal.
You can bound on shoulders of steel. If the sun understood how I feel, as the world falls beneath me, it's the perfect point of view. As the eyes below could see me, I turn to you.
The main body of the single is a story. It is a song about a water wheel, hence the title The Wheel. It's about a water wheel that falls in love with a character from this mill village that we have kind of imagined. We like the idea of this thing that was timeless and this thing that kept going round, but at the same time having kind of a heart and having feelings. And so that's what the song is about.
I think it has kind of enough universal themes to appeal to people who don't fall in love with water wheels.
The way we were thinking about this was that there's some timelessness in these buildings, and when you go and see somewhere like Style, you're kind of surrounded by the weight of time passing, but yet in amongst that are people's lives. Some of whose would have been incredibly short, you know, some of the kids that worked in the mill. So there's all these sort of different things in the story that kind of compete and are complementary, and actually mixing them up in this way is kind of quite interesting.
Musically, the song was quite heavily inspired by a song that we'd all performed on the March Greens EP called Deserve It, and it was a feel that we really, really liked, and so we sort of tried to write something in that vein.
As well as Danny, we've got Missy playing cello and Anthony on flute. So kind of adding to the bass palette that is Rick and Spence and me, we've got some exceptional musicians colouring in that world a bit more. But what we also did when we were at Style is recorded a lot of the sounds in the mill, the sounds of the machinery, but more importantly for the wheel, the sounds of the wheel. So we've got the sounds of water and the sort of creaking of these big massive timbers journeying over. And some of that stuff's really rhythmic, so that kind of forms a bed that you hear in places in the wheel, and we're kind of going to extend on in some of the other songs as well.
The middle eight of the song was never supposed to be the middle eight of this song, but it just kind of worked. It just happened in rehearsal. When we had been away at Hurst Green for a weekend, when we were fairly drunk, we came up with an instrumental that we call Sluice Gates, which is kind of got this Korg synthesizer as the main part of it. But we managed to make it fit into this piece nonetheless, and it forms the middle eight of the song. Again, like Same Old, the full Sluice Gates will appear later on, or maybe earlier on, we don't know yet, on the record.
And if Air were kind of into doing Wurzels covers, this would kind of be what they create. It's kind of very Gallic, very ambient, very Cafe Del Mar, but quite sort of folky themes to it. So bizarrely, it sits really well bang in the middle of the wheel. So that's where it's kind of ended up. But I think it'll probably make an appearance at some point elsewhere in the album, in its pure French form.
And then, just as you think the single is ending, another song comes in, which is a song called Revolution, which is one of Spence's tunes.
It's a guy who's kind of resisting change, but kind of realises that you can't really hold off too long, because the world is changing, the industrial nature of things is advancing, and it's asking him, is he ready for change?
And also for Revolution, that finishes off the wheel, there's a lot of harmonies in there, and it's just a beautiful, delicate close to the single. And I think when you sort of look at the words of that and you listen to the way that single ends, it's quite uplifting, quite inspirational. And I think if you think about the story, this time of flux and great change, none of those people could have imagined that within their lifetimes they'd see telephones and cars and international travel and communication, and the world somehow getting massively smaller, but at the same time getting massively bigger as well.
I am very confident that this is the best single that has ever been released that is about a water wheel falling in love with a mill worker.
Right, so yeah, I know we've got kind of like a few more songs to do and a bit of mixing and some artwork and stuff to sort out, but I'm now looking forward to playing these in their kind of almost new completed form live, and that's kind of getting me really excited now. So hopefully we'll get the rest of the songs finished fairly soon, and then we'll be out and about storming the arenas of the British Isles.